forgot I have a different work schedule, so I haven't watched that.
Yeah, well, I'll be watching the TV back. Okay, well, it's 7 p.m. on Monday, so we're going to call the Gardner City Council to order. Invite everybody in attendance to stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everybody. We'll get started with the agenda. We've got some issues here. We've got some things to talk about. Hopefully they'll go quickly, as the Jayhawks are playing the Pokes. I'd like to get home and watch that at some point, but it's got it on DVR. Anyhow, nice to see such a big group in attendance this evening. We don't always get this many. It's not exactly, you know, the town hall golf course meeting, which we had over 100 people show up at, but it's good to see all you fine folks here with us this evening. We don't have any public hearings. First item on the agenda is presentations, and we're going to get some information from our Citizen Budget Forum held last week. And Cheryl Harrison-Lee, welcome to the podium.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor and members of council. The kickoff meeting for the 2017 budget began with the February 2nd Citizens Budget Forum. There were 6 people in attendance. Staff provided a brief overview of the operating and the capital improvement program. In addition to that, a review of the governing body's strategic priorities was presented. Following the presentation, the citizens were asked to engage in a brainstorming session and to prioritize the ideas that were generated that night. Under the 4 strategic goals, I'd like to review the items that came up, starting with promote economic development. Citizens asked for more citizen engagement, more involvement from the chamber, and more festivals in the community with local businesses. Under improved quality of life, we were requested to look at a community center, looking at, again, additional citizen engagement opportunities, looking at more engagement for the parks and trails, and reducing truck traffic. Under infrastructure and asset management, we were asked to look at more energy efficient opportunities and considering rebates, as well as the traffic signal timing at Moonlight and Lincoln. Under fiscal stewardship, we were asked to reduce the spending across the board for the budget of 3% and to explore the possibilities of additional fees for use of services. Following the ideas, they were given an opportunity to establish the top 3 priorities. Under the top 3 priorities, we received 4 votes for the fiber optic cable, 2 for the community center, and 2 for more social media opportunities. Included in your packet tonight is a copy of the handout that was presented to the citizens, as well as the material from the forum where we reported the citizen brainstorming efforts as well as their votes. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have at this time, Mayor.
Okay. This is a presentation. It's not usually something that we do public comments on. Honestly, I think we've only got one person that showed up at the budget forum that's here this evening. Jerry, you want to make any comments?
No, I think Cheryl's covered it all.
Okay, very good.
Good job, Cheryl.
Thank you.
In which case, we'll open the floor. Council members, questions for Cheryl about the budget forum?
Well, I was at the budget forum. I attended. I know the mayor did some introductions there, and I was there. And first of all, I want to say thank you to the folks that came out and gave their input. It is very, very important that we hear from them. I will not lie. I think that we were somewhat disappointed that more people didn't come out. for the event. I'm gonna make a suggestion though, Cheryl,
Sure.
and maybe I'll get some consensus from the dais on this. Is there any possibility that we might be able to take some of our budget, listening tour maybe out away from the city hall and into neighborhoods? Either leveraging HOA relationships or, scheduling some time to actually get out into the neighborhoods and speak with people. Budget is too important.
Okay.
It's a very, key element of, it affects everybody in the city, and, I love the fact that 6 came out, but I'd like to get more input if possible. And if that means going out to people, I'd be willing to do that.
Okay, we can certainly look at some additional outreach opportunities.
Well, I also think we have the community organization, so it
Mhm.
might be good to leverage them as well in some
Okay.
meetings that they may have already scheduled.
All right, certainly.
Well, then, if I would piggyback one thing onto that, trying to get together with homeowners associations sometimes can be tough to find meeting places and stuff. I think that perhaps if we're going to do something like that, let's schedule them near community schools, the elementary schools,
That'd be good.
and then try and get the HOA people to come to the schools. Not that it's a long trip to City Hall, but perhaps the additional outreach effort would yield some results. Everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
And with Christie's idea about reaching out to the civic and social organizations,
Absolutely.
Okay,
marching orders.
all right.
Hey, Cheryl, I have one more question.
Yes.
Is there anything from an online presence? I mean, I know this was published with the agenda. We all received the documentation. But as far as publishing that in some social media online forum where people can see it and provide some feedback that way as
Yeah.
well, might be beneficial.
Okay, I'll work with the PIO and we'll put some other things together.
Like
for
maybe a
online.
survey monkey or something?
Actually, and the other thing is, there's a, year before last, I know in Wichita they do this, and I know that Laura and, I don't remember if it was Jackie or Nancy, had talked with the people in Wichita about doing an online town hall
Right,
about their budget. Apparently it was very successful. Perhaps we could do something similar. I think they had some interest, but last year's budget forum was so well attended, and maybe it fell by the wayside.
okay,
So, yeah, I'd check with them about that, but the city that had done it successfully was Wichita, so.
so we'll look at opportunities, we'll explore them, and then I'll report back to you and let you know what we've come up with.
Great.
Absolutely.
One more
Okay.
quick thing. I'm
Sure,
sorry.
Todd, go ahead.
When's our next citizen satisfaction survey scheduled? Is that anytime soon?
We don't have that in this year's budget, so we'll be putting it into the next year's budget, which will be the 17.
Every other year, basically.
I wasn't sure.
Correct. And yeah, that's, thank you for holding the event.
Okay.
And, as always, our citizens are always welcome to show up at any of our meetings and make public comments in regards to, their thoughts and ideas on the budget, whether it's during regular public comments or during, meetings and work sessions where we're discussing the budget in depth, so.
Or if they want to email us or call us.
Yes, I think everybody up here
Totally
is totally willing to see a lot more email and phone calls from, the constituents. So, nobody's disagreeing, so we'll take that as a yes. Thanks, Cheryl.
Okay.
Next item on the agenda is public comments. Members of the public are welcome to use this time to make comments about city matters or items on the agenda that are not part of a public hearing. The one thing that I would suggest is keep your comments to 5 minutes or less, and, we'll go from there. But if you have a public comment you'd like to make, please approach the podium, state your name and address for the record, and be heard. Good evening, Dale.
Good evening. I'm Dale Rose, 15340 Edgerton Road in Gardner. Make it short and sweet here so you can get off to the ball game here. I got just a little bit, here, that not much, going on, but, just, budget kinda hit the spot here, 'cause, as an airport board, you know, we were required to, in open meeting, have a financial statement available for the people, and what we took in, what we spent, and how we did it, and what we were projecting and everything. And, it was, directed by the city over this Freedom of Information Act. Anyway, I just wondering, it appears that the city doesn't have to qualify, or required to do that. Because as an advisory committee now, the advisory committee has asked to, we could get a financial report on how things are going out at the airport. And we've told, that the city administrator has sent down the word that, we're not privileged to that information, because we're an advisory committee. And that, in all my 30 years of upper management, that always brought up a red flag, like maybe somebody's trying to hide something. And anyway, that's, on a budget on the airport, the financials run a little different than the way the government runs. My 30 years, we got money at the start of the fiscal year. We knew how much we had to spend for the year and how we was going to budget it. And the airport don't work that way. If you spend everything you got, I always had to spend everything by the end of September. But if you do that with the airport, you're not, it's going to be about April before you got enough money to do anything. Because you got $12,000 a month coming in, that's it. So you're going to have to work with that. And so you need a cushion to pay bills with and work it that way. If you don't, you're going to be hurting for, if a project comes up or something that you need money for, you're not going to have it. That's about it.
Thank you, Dale.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks.
No one else coming forward. Leonard, you'll have an opportunity later. I'm gonna give you the high sign.
Okay, thank you.
Okay? We'll move on, to the, consent agenda. Is there a council member present that would like to remove an item from the consent agenda? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Harrison, second Shute, that we approve the consent agenda. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? Consent agenda passes. Committee recommendation, number 1, consider adopting an ordinance approving amendments to the Gardner Comprehensive Plan, Chapter 5, Land Use and Development, including adoption and incorporation by reference of the I-35 and Gardner Road interchange sub-area plan. Larry Powell, good evening.
Good evening, Sam. Good evening, council. The Planning Commission has reviewed the sub-area plan for the Gardner Road and I-35 interchange, and that particular, a little bit of history on that particular interchange involvement was that the staff has held 5 stakeholder meetings, provided for public input prior to the Planning Commission, and the plan layout was divided into 3 sections. Basically, the introduction had an overview and purpose, it went through the planning process and the public input sections, the description of the planning area itself, the background of the region of the planning area and the policy framework.
Larry, mic down, we're getting signals from the back.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Better now? Thank
Yes.
you.
Yes.
Well,
On section 2, the existing conditions, the existing character of the property, the existing land uses, zoning patterns, infrastructure, environmental conditions, and community facilities were reviewed. And on section 3, the recommendations section, the visions, goals, and policies, future land use and development principles, future utilities and implementations were considered. The plan area is outlined in what's known as a pink color here. It really shows up as red on our maps a little bit better than this. And it contains approximately 2,326 acres. It's bordered on the west basically by Waverly Road, on the north generally by West 183rd Street. It does, however, border around the existing ARC residential properties that are shown inside the city limits, on the east by Moonlight and on the south by West 199th Street. One of the key things to remember is that this plan does not annex any property and does not rezone any property if adopted. The future land use map is the Planning Commission adopted version next to the future land use map from the comprehensive plan. This map is not a zoning map, but it is a land use map which shows broader land use categories, and the text of the plan offers potential zoning districts within each land use category. The sub-area plan, which will supersede the comprehensive plan if adopted, will take its future land use purposes and would overwrite those purposes that are currently shown within the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan future land use map will be updated to reflect those sub-area plans later this year as part of the implementation and the annual review of the comprehensive plan if it is adopted. This particular map is brought to your attention to show two items of interest that we consider very not generic, but very valuable to the development of the property, and that is the future sewer and road uses. The light dotted lines are the future sewer development plans, the red are the collector streets, and the blue area along I-35 is the future sub-zone road that would be used to connect I-35 interchange at Gardner, Moonlight, and 175th Street. This is a closer up look at the interchange area of the Gardner Road interchange. It does show the general roundabouts and street alignments, and this is basically an educated concept at this point in time. There has not been any final locations or engineering done to exactly show the locations of these roads. The roads do, however, show the importance of maintaining the access to I-35 for the future development of the area, whether it be for commercial or industrial purposes. The comprehensive plan amendment itself would be edited on pages 51 and 52, and text would be removed that discusses the area on the other side of the interstate from unknown and long-term growth and be upgraded with the existing I-35 interchange language. This would introduce the sub-area plans and incorporate them by reference into the existing comprehensive plan. Any applicable policies in this section will either remain in regards to annexation or others, or be incorporated into plan policies. This is the planning area recommendation, and it does recommend that the City Council approve the Planning Commission adopted amendments to the City of Gardner Comprehensive Plan and the I-35 and Gardner Plan Road Interchange Sub-Area Plan, which includes the following findings and amendments as adopted in the Planning Commission Resolution PC-16-01, and that is to change the I-35 and Gardner Road Interchange Sub-Area Plan Map 3-1, which is shown on the next page, for future land use for the area bound by West 191st Street on the south, Popular extended on the west, and the regional commercial on the east, from high-density residential on the north, from a heavy industry to light industry, and this was a request from one of the adjacent property owners to aid in the transition from the intermodal area into the commercial area that would be allocated down on I-35. This would be the light purple area that's right above 191st Street and above the general regional commercial area that's shown on the west side of the intersection of 191st and I-35. That was the main change, and that change was written, and this map was drawn to show you that change via the policy request for change. So the suggested motion is to adopt the ordinance approving the Planning Commission adopted version of the amendments to the City of Gardner Comprehensive Plan, Chapter 5, Land Use and Development, and the I-35 and Gardner Interchange Sub-Area Plan.
Thank you. We're going going to open the floor for public comments regarding this item. If you have a public comment that you would like to make, please approach the podium, state your name and address for the record, and be heard. I know we have at least one person.
My name is Leonard Fawcett. I'm with the owners of Highview One LLC. It's 28 acres that's within the city limits of Gardner City, and it borders the I-35 corridor. We appreciate having a few minutes to talk. I had a little handout that I hoped had circulated, and as you get that, take one and pass it around. I'd like for everybody to be able to look at it together. Our property, there is a circle that's on the front page of this little handout, and it's a little triangular shaped piece of property, 28 acres, that's found there within that circle. And that's on page 1 of this handout. And as you look at it, you'll notice that it's current zoning, and that's what this page is, the I-35 and Gardner Road interchange, sub-area plan, existing zoning, and it is currently zoned as C3. Now, if you go to page 2 of this handout, we just saw this, and these are actual copies that was on the website. You'll see that the plan is for this 28 acres to be used as low-density residential, single-family dwelling residential, that's going to border right there the I-35 corridor, this new collector street and then I-35. The way the land lays, you likely wouldn't face your house toward I-35, but there'd be no privacy in the backyard either. The way the I-35 lays, whatever you were doing in your backyard would be on public display. If you go to page 3 of this handout, this was a letter from 2001. It's the understanding letter when this property was annexed into the city. Bullet point number 5 found there, and this was the understanding between the property owners and the city, that the city envisioned this property for employment zoning designations, and it would possibly be zoned, and as you'll notice, these various categories. Now, if you go to the next page, page 4 of this handout, this was the final decision that was made, that was sent to the owners of the property. The governing body had accepted this, they had approved it, and if you'll notice there in that, it's about line 5 in the body of the paragraph. It says it will be rezoned to C3. So that was the understanding when we annexed the property into the city, it would be zoned C3. Now, we communicated with the planners. We spoke at the January 28th meeting, and there was no small discussion on the subject of changing this piece of property. And the reason we bring it up here this evening is because the planners have went to a lot of work. We appreciate all their hard work. It's vital, it's necessary for the city. And so we're happy for the city council to accept their plan. Well, we're just asking for one exception, and that is this 28-acre piece of ground, that it be accepted and left Zone C3. We feel strongly that if this is rezoned as low-density residential, it will really compromise the future use. It'll compromise the value of the property. We feel like any investor that might come and look at the city with potential locations, if they see that and they even imagine using it, and then they realize, well, now the city, they're wanting to see that zoned low-density residential, that's going to probably just terminate any future discussion. They're not going to want to engage in a challenge to develop that in a commercial way, if that's the city's intent. So, very respectfully, we're requesting if the city would please consider, make an exception on this one parcel of ground and not change it to low-density residential, but rather leave it this way. That's the best use of it, and of course, we hope to see that take place. So, I'm happy to answer any questions, but I really thank the city council for a little time here to speak.
Oh, you bet, Leonard. And, yeah, we'll probably address this when we're discussing it with Larry. There could be an opportunity, you might want to hang tight to call you back up, but we appreciate your comments.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Other comments? With no one coming forward, questions or comments for Larry or staff regarding committee recommendation number 1?
I have a couple of them real quick, Larry. I know, I watched the planning commission meeting, and there were several folks who were on there, who asked that their property not be rezoned. I think Leonard was at the meeting and spoke. I do have a bit of a problem with, if we have it one way, it's already zoned one way, but then we change it on this master plan, just like you said, the first thing I thought of when I watched the meeting was investors coming in are gonna look at that stuff, and it's gonna throw curveballs at them, because they're gonna go, well, what is it? What am I buying here? Does the city know what they're doing? I mean, because they have it done one way, and here it's another, and I think it just muddies the water a little bit to potential people who wanna come to Gardner to do stuff, and make them wonder what is really going on. And for the owners that were here and were voicing, you know, hey, look, I don't want this changed, even though I know Chair said that it wasn't gonna be changed, and Ryan expressed the same thing. I think it's just the idea that it's a slow and increasing way to make it happen over time, when all of a sudden it's just, we're gonna change zoning on you, and it's been like this on the paper for 5 years, and now we're gonna just do it. Any thoughts on that?
Well, I would just add, I mean, I can appreciate the fact that during the city commission meeting, there was a lot of discussion about this isn't a rezone plan, it's a comprehensive plan, but part of our problem in the past is that we've had a comprehensive plan and we haven't always followed it. So I think that if we want to adopt this plan for future planning, not that there won't ever be any changes, but we should have it as established as we can right now, or we'll just be in the same boat as items come up.
Rich, you said that you had a couple of questions.
Oh, no, I got most of them out there. I mean, because
Okay.
I just want us to, when developers come in from out of town, I think uniformity is the key. I mean, they gotta know that they're dealing with us and we know what the heck we're doing.
Sure.
Yeah.
Developers want certainty, that's
Yeah.
for sure.
I-
Steve, you wanted in.
Yeah, I've gotten a lot of feedback from folks, who both were in that meeting and were not in that meeting, concerning this particular sub-area plan. There was some concerns, for example, about the light industrial along the reverse frontage road, that they weren't sure if that was the appropriate use for that property. I received a comment from another landowner who's not in an annexed portion of the city, actually owns land along 199th Street, that was very, very concerned about light residential on his, or low-density residential on his property. There were some other comments about the location of the business office park so far away from the interstate. I just think there's a lot of questions about this map, a lot of questions about the sub-area plan. I am going to recommend that we table this recommendation for now, and so we can have a little bit more study, a little more deliberation, have some more feedback from the folks that are in this map. I want to make sure that I'm not trying to question what the planning commission did or what our staff did. What I'm trying to say is that if we want to make sure we get this done right, because this is enshrined in a long-term document that we're basing all of our future capital investment on, I think that we should probably have a couple of, at least one work session to discuss this.
I agree.
Okay.
I mean,
Did you have anything else you wanted to add?
No, Steve covered it. I'm a little hesitant to make a broad sweeping change like this without more study and more discussion in a public forum.
Todd?
Have we heard from the property owner, just immediately to the west of this property, it looks like it's zoned for medium-density residential.
Yeah.
Did we hear anything from, I'm not sure who that would be.
You can take the question there.
Which property was it again, sir?
Just immediately to the west of that property. So it would be basically between the regional commercial
Yeah.
and the low-density residential. It's right now.
Where
in the orange.
185th Street runs straight out, almost where it runs in and turns before it hits, I-35.
Mhm.
The property that's currently R5?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Oh, R2, not R5. R2.
No, I don't believe that we have heard any comments to that. We can certainly check back in our notes. I don't have those in front of me here and bring those back to you.
Yeah. I'm interested in that as well because, usually frontage roads are commercial. That's just the way they've always been. And if this is a frontage road along the north side of I-35, it doesn't make a lot of sense to put medium density residential there. But again, I'm not a planner. I'd love to be able to get folks together in the room and work these out.
Okay. Were there people, did you get responses from anybody else besides the Highview property?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
and if we are going to, if you're gonna make a motion to table, if we do end up tabling, Cheryl, you would have, you'd be able to put together a plan to look at, you know, the concerns of Mr. Fawcett and his group and any of the other groups that may have talked to the council president already?
Yes, I'll follow up and make sure
Okay.
I understand what those concerns are and then do what we need to do.
And then try to schedule a work session
Sure,
sometime
I'll get to work session.
somewhat soon because I know that we want to get this.
Yeah, we'll see whether or not the motion passes, but if
Well, I make the motion.
If it
Second.
If it does, then, you know, by council updates next meeting, you can kind of timeline it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I made the motion.
So,
Leave.
motion, second more, that we table committee recommendation item number 1. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstention? Committee recommendation number 1 is tabled. Committee recommendation number 2, consider approving the final plat accepting the dedication of rights-of-way and easement for Copper Springs 4, located at the northeast and southeast corner of the intersection of University Drive and 162nd Terrace in Gardner. Larry, welcome back to the podium.
Thank you. As this is a final plat, case number PP-15-06, named Copper Springs 4. The aerial photo and application area is shown before you. The area that's outlined in red is the actual application area, which is the very southwestern part of the Copper Springs area itself. The total area under the application is approximately 9.5 acres and has a total of 28 platted lots within it, and the vicinity map is shown for you there. Copper Springs 3 is directly above it, along where University Drive and 162nd Terrace cross, and then goes 162nd Terrace goes back up to the left, is Copper Springs 3. This photo is actually on University looking north, and so the properties that are under identification there on the map extend to your left and to your right, and the Copper Springs 3 housing is actually shown in the background in this location. And this is the 162nd Place, which is actually a cul-de-sac which extends down and into the middle of that property on the bottom left side, as shown in the red area up above. The street areas you can see are in place, as is storm sewer, water, sewer, and electric, gas. The street itself, though, is still needing to have its final asphalt layers placed on it, so it would be final data completed, it would be cleaned up and completed at this point in time. The Copper Springs area plat itself, as you can see here, these are the platted lots. The roads or right-of-ways are to be dedicated via this plat of 162nd Terrace, a portion thereof, 162nd Place to complete it, and 162nd Court, which is a short cul-de-sac on the right-hand side off of 162nd Terrace, and the north half of 163rd Street which is shown in the green outline on the bottom left side of the plat. A sanitary sewer line will be extended from between the existing line located between proposed lots 44 and 45, and water lines will be extended from the existing water that is located down the west side of University Drive. Street lights ultimately will be installed, as well as the finished top layer of asphalt on the existing roads. Prior to the release of the final plat for recording, the required excise tax shall be paid, and that fee totals $71,264.16. Regarding the Parks and Recreation improvements, on January 5th, 2015, the Gardner City Council initiated amendment to the Parks Master Plan that would allow for an alternative location for the future trail in the northeast portion of the northeast quarter of the section of the development under application near the wooded natural area. And if I go back to the first map, the area in A would be where that new trail would run. It would run through that wooded area from the bottom right up to west 159th Street. On January 4th, 2016, Jeff Stewart, the city's Park and Recreation Department Director and Developers Engineering Consultant, Mr. Jim Long, met to discuss this trail relocation, and during the meeting, Mr. Long agreed to add the new trail with a future revised layout so the city could review and respond. A condition of approval is thus: the applicant shall submit a conceptual trail location for the northeast portion of the northeast quarter section 13, Township 14 South, in range 22 East and the 6th PM. The city's 2014 comprehensive plan also calls for a collector-type road along the 163rd Street alignment, which is the half-mile line between 159th and 167th Street. To ensure a vehicular connection point in the future is provided, a condition of approval is added below, where the developer will be asked to agree in principle to provide a future road connection point to Moonlight Road from a Copper Springs development, and this has been agreed to by the developer. The city is seeking a meeting with APAC by the end of February to discuss meeting with them to redirect their heavy truck traffic, which is currently using University Drive and is entering along that green area road that I showed you earlier into their quarry, which is just off the map to the bottom left side of this page where it says Section 13. Thus, they have an access easement along 163rd Street alignment west of University Drive that they own at this time. And we would need to work with them to try and realign that, to move that truck traffic out of this subdivision as it continues to grow and become more housing oriented rather than rural, and get them to use Moonlight Road as their intersection. The recommendation of the Planning Commission is that they recommend approval of the final plat FP-15-06 for Copper Springs 4, and for acceptance of the road right-of-way dedications and other easements subject to the following conditions. Prior to the release of the final plat for recording, the required excise tax shall be paid. The applicant shall submit a conceptual trail location for the northeast portion of the northeast quarter of Section 13, Township 14 South, in range 22 east of the 6th PM. And the applicant shall agree to, in principle, to provide a vehicle connection point in conjunction with a future Copper Springs development to Moonlight Road to augment traffic connectivity of the vicinity.
Okay, Larry, thank you. We'll open the floor for public comments. Anyone present that would like to make a public comment regarding committee recommendation number 2? That would be the opportunity. Please step to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and be heard.
I'm David Rhodes, 335 West Madison, Gardner, Kansas. I'm in support of everything that the Planning Commission has recommended here. And Mayor, Council, and staff, I would really like to encourage that you plant the seed that Apex traffic does not end up going to that 167th Street road to Moonlight. They have an access point off of Gardner Road to the west, and I just, as this thing develops in the next few phases over the next few years, I would just like the council and the Planning Commission to look at that truck traffic going west rather than east. Thank you.
David, thanks for coming out this evening. Other public comment? With no one coming forward, questions for Larry or other staff regarding committee recommendation number 2?
the road that Apex has now, I mean, is it a viable road out to the other side of Gardner, to Gardner Road, or?
The existing road,
Yeah.
it's
I,
basically.
'cause I look on the aerial map and it looks like there's some kind of road there, is it?
It's basically compacted gravel.
Okay.
That's been, they've used that entrance point for many years, and so
Okay.
it's a very solid base for them, and it's also the shortest route for sometimes
Right.
for their trucks to come in and out. A truck route designation to Moonlight would help somewhat in allowing them to move from the other
Gardner Road, you
side.
mean, or-
I'm sorry, yes, Gardner Road. And, they do have an existing gated entrance along Gardner Road at this point in time, but it would need, improvement.
I was gonna say, would we need to do anything on our end to make it more feasible for them to make that happen?
We could certainly work with them on the entrance. The entrance is certainly wide enough and exists, and it's gated. It just needs to be improved, I think, internally to get them to where they need to go.
All right, that was my main concern.
My thinking is kind of on the same, basic, train of thought as Rich. I think the reason why they're using the Moonlight entrance is because, or 167 Moonlight, is because it's just easier to get in there and out of there than it is to go through downtown Gardner. Is there, I mean, we don't have 167, that's a truck route, and for good reason, because it's not, it doesn't have shoulders and it doesn't have.
Not conducive.
It's not. And so what we're gonna be asking the APAC folks then to do is to go right through downtown Gardner to get into and out of that quarry, is that correct?
I suppose it depends on where they're coming from, but if they're coming from the south, they currently come up Moonlight and then hit University and go in that way, yes, sir. The roadway along University, though, was not developed for that kind
Correct,
of
it's not.
traffic. It's a residential street.
Yeah, we don't want them going up there, I understand that. It's kind of a pickle because we don't, that's gravel and other types of aggregate that's coming through downtown Gardner now. And so the question is, is there any way that we can accommodate them without making our downtown traffic more difficult?
I think we just need to meet with them and have that discussion and see what they would suggest.
Anyone else? Thought I see you scrolling through over there.
No.
Nothing? If there's no other questions, I'd entertain a motion for, committee recommendation number 2.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Moore, second Melton, that we approve the final plat for Copper Springs 4 and accept the easements and road right-of-way dedications subject to the committee, the conditions that have been stipulated. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstention? Committee recommendation number 2 passes. And, this is it's a good thing. I'm very excited about it. David, how many houses are you guys getting ready to build out there?
There's 32 plus 28, and then eventually there'll be another 180.
Fantastic.
Thank you, council.
Have a good evening.
You too. I'm gonna go watch KU.
Lucky devil. There's no old business, and new business item number 1 is consider approving the revised economic development incentive policy to include a public infrastructure financing program. I'm very excited about this, as the only city that I know of in Johnson County that controls all of their utilities. We are uniquely positioned to use them as potential for incentives. It's something that's been discussed for years. The Electric Utility Board, back when Lee was on it, was talking about electric riders and things like that to spur the kind of to spur some economic development. And I think what we've got here is comprehensive. I'm going to welcome Madge Wolf, the podium, to introduce. We've got a guest speaker, but this has been something that we've talked about for a long time, something that I've been in favor of. The council president was very instrumental in getting this new push on. So, welcome, Matt, and what do you have for us?
On April 20th in 2015, the City Council approved the Gardner and Economic Development Incentive Policy. And at that meeting, Council gave direction to staff to look at how we could leverage our utilities and incorporate that into the policy. So staff since that meeting has done a lot of additional research, got input from our new utility director, and also worked with the Hardwick Law Firm to develop a new tool that we can include into our incentive policy. Herb Hardwick is here tonight. Will provide a presentation on the Public Infrastructure Financing Program.
Thank you, Matt. Herb, it's good to see you again.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. It's great to be back, even on a holiday. You're right, Mayor, this is a great opportunity for the city of Gardner. And what we're here today is to discuss a new incentive. It's called the Public Infrastructure Financing Program. Why would the city at this point consider a new incentive after just adopting a policy only a year ago? Well, your city staff is constantly evaluating options to identify ways to leverage the use of public dollars dedicated to development projects. City is always looking for ways to come up with new tools for developers so that they will be incented to come to the city of Gardner to invest in this community. As the mayor pointed out, we have this particular opportunity is very, very new. With Public Infrastructure Financing Program, developers will have an opportunity to construct new projects, to finance, build, and construct public infrastructure, inclusive of water and sewer lines, streets, curbs, sidewalks, and other public improvements necessary to support new development. The city, by allowing the developers to construct public infrastructure with this new development, will shift the obligation and the cost of financing the build-out of public infrastructure for the developers. By shifting the financing and the cost of construction, the city will save money, expedite development, and allow the developers to integrate the public infrastructure component into the private development itself. This is a great tool that has great possibility for the city of Gardner. How does this work? The city has three different options. One, it can waive one-time development fees that are typically imposed on development projects. Two, it can defer the cost of utilities that are typically charged to new projects when they're brought online. The city can either defer those charges or reduce them for a period of time. And then of three, you have the ability to utilize tax abatement. By bundling all three of those incentives, you're providing the developer an opportunity to recover costs over a period of time. You're uniquely situated because you control your utility, and so that gives you a distinct advantage to be able to apply this particular mechanism in the marketplace where other cities wouldn't have this competitive advantage. When a developer invests capital to construct and finance public infrastructure, there would be an opportunity for that developer to recover that cost at levels of 100%, 50%, or 25%. But it would all be a function of a system, a point system that the city would put in place. You would use a criteria that you would use four important factors. One would be the geographic location in the city. Two, the number of jobs created. Three, jobs which pay at a high level. And four, revenue generated by the business or invested by the capital, capital investment by the particular business. These four factors would be central in terms of evaluating how you would assign incentives for each of the respective projects. I think we have a schematic. Jim, could you show that so we can kind of walk through it? I don't even know if you can see this. we talked about the 4 factors, and each factor, there are point systems that are applied for each of the line items. For example, in the first one, we're talking about geographic location, and you're showing short-term growth areas, and for that, you would receive 20 points. If it's a midterm growth area, you would receive 40 points. The same would be for each of the respective categories, the number of jobs, 1 through 10, jobs created, 5 points, 10 through 25, 10 points, so on and so forth. Based upon this scheme, the city staff could evaluate each project and assign points accordingly to the point system. The scale kind of runs like this. For 160 points, the project would qualify for up to 100% of reimbursement of public infrastructure costs plus additional abatement. For 120 points, between 120 to 159 points, the project would qualify for up to 50% of reimbursement for public infrastructure costs plus additional abatement. From 50 to 119 points, the project would qualify for up to 25% reimbursement, but no abatement in that particular instance. Jeannie, if you could, I'd like to share with the council an example, so hopefully we can crystallize this a little bit more. Let's assume that a developer comes to the city of Gardner, and the developer would like to build a distribution center. The distribution center would bring 150 jobs. It would bring, of those 150 jobs, 50 or more would be high-paying jobs. The public infrastructure cost for that developer would be $2 million. The developer's cost of capital would be 4%, and those one-time developer fees that the city imposes would total, in this instance, $210 and $747. Under this scenario, if a business were to locate in the city's short-term growth area, it would qualify for the following: 20 points for location, 40 points for bringing 50 more jobs into the city, 40 points for 50 more jobs which were high-paying, 30 points for having revenues between $20 to $50 million. Based upon the point system, the city would assign 130 points to that particular developer for that particular project. And based on the scale, the city would reimburse the developer for 50% of its public infrastructure costs as set forth. Again, I'm not sure that you can see this, but in the first 12 months, the total development fees that would be imposed by the city would equal $210,000, $747. While the initial capital outlay was $2 million, the net cost to the developer that it would be investing would be $1,789,253. So the developer is already benefited because the city waived those one-time fees. If you go down to year 1, it shows another waiver of fees or reduction of the utility charges at a level of $54,000 roughly, and property tax abatement of $421,769. By the end of year 2, the developer has a benefit of $1.3 million. He's recovered his money because the city has incented it by waiving the one-time fees, 2, by deferring utility costs, and 3, allowing for tax abatement. By the time the developer has been in the project for 5 years, he's recouped $1.7 million in total, and then everything beyond year 5, going through year 10, represents abatement or an added incentive for that developer to reimburse that developer for coming to Gardner, bringing jobs, and creating a new economic engine. So while it's somewhat straightforward in terms of what the city is doing, is utilizing the one-time fees, the utility costs, and the tax abatement, by bundling that and then using a point system to prioritize those things that are most important to the city of Gardner, the city is able to direct development and reward developers for coming into the city and investing capital in order to bring new jobs and build new businesses in this community.
Questions?
Questions?
What comments?
Oh, what, now, this is the end of your presentation?
Yes, it is. I'm sorry, Mayor. Yes,
Cool.
sir.
In which case, we'll open the floor for public comment. I was just wondering if you were pausing there.
No, I was just pausing just to,
Okay.
if there,
If there's a member of the public who would like to make public comment regarding new business item number 1, now is your opportunity. Please step to the podium and be heard. Okay, no one coming forward. Questions for Herb regarding new business item number 1? Oh, Christie, you looked at
No, okay. First of all, Herb, I'm overjoyed. I'm glad that we're working on this. This is something I've been pushing for a long time. Working on a solution that we can offer equally to anybody who wants to come to this town. Instead of throwing riders at their, individual riders for their developments, that we actually have something that we can apply to our entire district for annexation as well as development. So I'm very, very happy that we've got something here that we can offer them. Understand, I'm trying to let the public know too, the whole point of this particular incentive is to allow the developers to put in the infrastructure they need up front, to be able to upfront the capital for their projects, so that we don't have to do the upfront capitalization ourselves, which is very, very critical, because we have a lot of infrastructure in the ground in places where there isn't any development. And I didn't want that. I wanted to be able to have infrastructure in place and development occurring at the same time. And that gets rid of, that's why I wanted to get rid of the benefit districts. I wanted to get rid of things like, these unpaid assessments that are sitting out there on property that isn't being developed, but we've already put the infrastructure in the ground for those developers. So this allows them to put the infrastructure in that they need on the timetable that they set, and we make them whole on the back end, which is the whole point of the utility give back. So I really appreciate your work on this, Herb, and I'm enthusiastically in support of this.
well, thank you. You absolutely have, it's a great idea because you're leveraging your capital.
Mm-hmm.
You could bring on many more development projects by asking developers to put their capital out, and then, as you mentioned, paying them on the back end.
Yep.
And so it's pretty smart, and not only are you asking them to carry it, but you're also rewarding them for doing so.
Exactly.
And so I think that could be a major motivation for a lot of developers, because the tax abatement in and of itself, everything else is gravy, with respect to utilities and the waiver of the one-time fees.
I'm thinking of net present value here.
Yes.
And if we, I don't have a problem with them paying 2015 or 2016 dollars to put in that infrastructure. We'll give them back the net present value benefit on the out years. Everybody's made whole and everybody's happy.
And it's not lost, the other excellent point is that developers like to move very quickly.
Yes.
And so to be able to expedite a project by controlling both their project and the public infrastructure makes it a little bit more seamless. So that's another upside for this particular tool.
Yeah. The thing I like about it is that development inside a municipality is a partnership between the city and the people doing the development. I know that developers are always looking for cities that want to make sure that they want to make sure that the cities have skin in the game. But cities want to see the developers to have skin in the game as well.
Mm-hmm.
Here, the developers are putting skin in the game on the front end, and then getting incented because they did.
Yep.
Absolutely.
I got
You want
yeah, just a quick question. So, you'll have to forgive me, I'm not real familiar with exactly how this works. So, say I'm a developer, you score my development up front, and, and then I do the development and put in the infrastructure and pay for it all, and then with the city backing it up according to my score on the front end, or according to my score after I've proven that I brought the number of jobs that we've scored upon. Say I come to you and I say I'm gonna bring 50 jobs or more, and that gives me a score of 40 points in one category and 40 points in another category. So you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
I can tell you one thing, and then reality happens, and something else happens, and now are the citizens gonna be on the hook for this on the back end?
Well, I think.
That's an excellent question.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt.
No. Herb, go ahead.
Clawbacks.
The way we would structure that, Councilman, is that we would have a redevelopment agreement, and we would evaluate the project, and we would score it on the front end. And then we would enter into a redevelopment agreement that in effect says that if you don't perform pursuant to the terms and conditions of this redevelopment agreement, then we would have what we call clawbacks, and that we can recover or recoup on the back end for non-performance from the developers some of the benefits and incentives that we're giving that particular developer on this particular project. So there is a safeguard for the public, so that you don't have a developer come in and make representations that they cannot fulfill, and then not have any recourse once the project is underway and you have provided incentives for that particular developer. Excuse me.
I'm just a little bit concerned that this doesn't have that clawback clause in here. I know it's gonna be a contractual thing at the end, but
Mhm.
it'd probably be nice to have something in this document here that says.
Or at least show maybe, kind of like with this chart, what if somebody, you know, one of the things that Lee's point is, if I'm building a company and I say I'm gonna have 100 employees
Yes.
at above average pay, chances are pretty good, I'm not gonna have 100 employees on day one.
Right.
Chances are good, I'm going to have those phased in, so it would be nice to be able to say, okay, your benefit is going to line out with your growth plan in some of these areas.
That's a good idea.
That's a great statement, fair comment, and that could be built into an agreement. Without question, we could put that type of proviso in an agreement and could make it part of the language.
One thing I'd like to point out is it's actually in our incentive policy, it talks about clawback.
You know, it is in
Just
the
everything.
original.
This is just an example, it's not part of the policy.
Yes.
And when we actually do have a real project, the details on the clawback will be in the development agreement.
Okay,
Absolutely.
that's what I was looking for.
Yeah.
That's part of our template, I think, yeah.
Todd?
So, okay, I'm trying to understand, I understand the payback and those things. If I have a company and I go to Olathe, for instance, and let's say there's shovel-ready property with infrastructure already there, and they say they'll give me a 10-year tax abatement. I mean, isn't that a better deal? I mean, I'm trying to figure out, from a company perspective, I mean, how is this a benefit to them?
How is it a bit, well,
As opposed to us just putting in the infrastructure ourselves and, you know, and giving them a tax abatement. I understand how it benefits us. I don't quite understand how it benefits a company coming in. Maybe I'm not seeing this correctly.
sure. I think for developers, developers like to have control of projects, and timing becomes a critical factor, as you can imagine. And so what happens with a lot of developers is that when they go into a city and they have to coordinate their project with the city's schedule for building out public infrastructure along with their project, sometimes that makes them uncomfortable because it's bureaucratic, and sometimes it extends their project out, which, when that happens, it costs them more money. So if they have the ability to control the entire project, and if they can fold in the public infrastructure component and construct it simultaneously when they're building out their project, a lot of times they feel more comfortable, they feel that they can control the cost better than sometimes the city can, and that gives them, that from their standpoint is a benefit. If you're dealing with a Walmart, and I'm sure you've dealt with Walmart, I think they want to control the entire shebang, if you will.
They do.
It's not a situation where they want to necessarily coordinate with the city in order to achieve a particular timeline for building their project. They would rather do it themselves because they believe that they're much more efficient, and because they're more efficient, they can save money.
How's that, so essentially, I mean, how's it any different than just saying you get 65% tax abatement for 10 years? Or, you know, put it, I mean, how are we leveraging our utilities, I guess?
Well, by leveraging the utilities, that in some cases can be a substantial savings for a company. So if they're not paying, it depends on how the city decides to what degree are you willing to defer utility costs and for what period of time, that could be a major impact. So the tax abatement is one thing, but this is something that you control, and your cost structure is your cost structure for your utilities. So whether you have 10 companies or 100, your cost structure is still the same. So it's kind of like being like McDonald's. You know, you can sell an extra hamburger and it's not really going to affect you that much. Same thing with your utility costs. You can provide a benefit and a savings to a company, whereas City A over here cannot. So it's a question of how much you're willing to put at the table. If you're talking about, in this scenario, 150 jobs, 50 of them are high paying, the city may be willing to go a long way in terms of tax abatement and the deferment of utility costs in order to bring the XYZ Corporation into the community.
That's the big advantage I see from a sales perspective. I mean, if I'm going out and everybody else around us can't do this, and I'm able to go in and go, look, I know you use energy and I know you flush toilets, I can help you with that. It makes it real simple for them to go, wow, we do flush a lot of toilets around here, you know, especially with 150 people working.
No, you're right. I mean, there's essentials. It's not glamorous or sexy or anything like that to talk about electric.
Costs money.
Wastewater or water, but it's a big cost element to a business operating, especially a commercial business. And let's be honest here. The reason why we're looking at something like this is because we want to direct a certain type of development to a certain area of our city.
Right.
So, you know, we're looking for retail. We're looking for commercial. We're looking for some light industrial. We can help to guide that development in certain specific areas based on how we apply this incentive. That's powerful stuff.
We can still use the traditional incentives too, can't we? I mean,
Absolutely.
I mean, so we're not locked into this, so if you know, if they want us to do it, we can look at doing that. I think it's a great option though, because it just gives us an option where before we didn't have one. We're just gonna be like everybody else, and now we can throw out some stuff and really set the standard, so to speak, for the southern Johnson County and say, look, you're gonna come here and you're gonna get the best possible service and get, make the most money.
Distinguish ourselves in a good way.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, for pointing that out.
One other thing that I might point out, you know, if an organization, a company, a corporation has an opportunity to come to Gardner or go to Olathe, and Olathe has already got the infrastructure built out. Well, the cost of that infrastructure and what the developers had to pay in excise fees and things like that, that's already built in to whatever costs they're going to pay to construct their new facilities. Pretty much, you know, that, so
they have higher excess tax?
Yeah. Well, and
in that scenario.
yeah, the other thing, but actually, well, and they're not getting rebated on those, I would imagine.
Typically not, no.
Right.
Because they don't own their own utilities, so they can't.
Right.
Right, they have no control over that.
Okay. And the other thing is that if they've already got shovel-ready property, that means that, you know, all that stuff's there. There's a certain advantage that they've got there. What we're trying to do is to get them interested in places where there's not utilities in the ground. And honestly, I mean, if we want to build spec industrial parks where it's just roads and electric and water and sewer lines, we can do that, and people are going to want to come here. Am I right?
Yeah.
But that's a cost that the city's going to bear ourselves. Whereas here we're forming a partnership, and part of the partnership is that they have skin in the game on the front end, and we pay them back over time. I'm explaining this correctly, am I not, man?
You are. You are.
And I understand that, and I'm for it. I'm just saying, is it enough of an incentive to just say, hey, if you put your $2 million up front, we'll pay it back? I mean, and then we'll give you the normal tax payments. I mean, that's how I'm looking at it.
It'll work for some entities that have the deep pockets and wanna control that, like
Like a
Walmart.
Walmart or Cerner or somebody like that. Build a
Exactly, but it
huge
won't be a one-size fits
campus.
all, don't get me wrong.
Right.
It won't be a one-size fits all,
Yeah, there's other people that are gonna want different things.
yeah.
We cannot underscore timing, and
Sure.
Yeah.
timing in terms of being able to bring a project online is just paramount in today's marketplace, especially for retailers who have several transactions going on simultaneously. For them, the sooner they get in the ground, the more success that they will have, they can recover their capital. So the city, they would gladly spend their money, especially if they can recover it on the back end, in order to open their doors in another community.
The other thing I really like about this is if we have an issue like we have over by, you know, the paint shop, I mean, where if somebody came in and put all the infrastructure in and then goes out of business, well, we can just jump on the other side of that and keep moving on, because the infrastructure's there and we didn't spend any money on it.
Well, and that's a kind of to one of my questions. Is there an opportunity with this, what do I want to say, kind of tweak this for areas, like Rich said, if we have areas in place where we have the infrastructure there, and quite frankly, it's just decaying because nobody's utilizing it, nobody's maintaining it, so maybe somebody doesn't have to invest, you know, millions of dollars, but there is a smaller investment, but to us, it's a benefit to get somebody in that location?
Yes.
I mean, can we assign points by area as well?
Absolutely. I mean, the beauty of this is that you can tailor it to, as someone, I think the mayor mentioned earlier, to drive development, location by location, if you decided to be that focused.
Yep.
So you would have the opportunity to go back into areas and create a point system or assign a point system to give more incentive for developers to come into an area that needs redevelopment, if you will. So you have that flexibility, so that this particular concept will allow you to do that.
I'm thinking that this can not only be used for property that it's being looked at for annexation or growth, but also for things like downtown, or
yes.
things like islands within the city that aren't being developed.
Right, where we've already spent money.
Absolutely.
Yes,
So,
that's very creative and insightful.
We're a smart group.
Absolutely.
Well, and humble.
Well, yeah, humble too.
One other thing, Herb, I know you do a lot of this kind of work for other government entities. One of the things that I've heard for the past couple of years is, you know, developers want certainty, and I mean, if they have the ability to keep their own schedule because they're making their investment on the front end, doesn't that provide certainty? And for the kind of developers with the kind of financial wherewithal that you can depend on for the long haul?
That's a very important consideration. A year ago, when you adopted your policy, we were very excited for you because it was a big step forward, because now you have a toolbox. Developers can look and say, you know what, the city of Gardner provides X, Y, and Z. You can come to the table and start negotiating and put something on the table, and this is something that's added. And so the more things that you put in place, and to the extent that that becomes institutionalized, I think it really enhances the city of Gardner from an economic development standpoint.
I think too, it's gonna help our bond rating, because we're not gonna have to put in so much money, you know, upfront.
that's the other thing too, we can
You know,
bond, we can bond more projects.
Right, because we're not tied up with all that stuff in the
Exactly.
ground.
Our bond dollars go further.
Well, that's my other hat is bond finance, so
Yep.
you're preaching to the choir on that one.
Yep.
Absolutely. I'm gonna take up any more of your time if there are
Other questions, comments?
Thank you so much, Mayor, members of the council.
Thanks, Herb.
It's always good to see you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Any other questions for staff or any other comments? Because if there's not, I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion, Shoot, second, Harrison, that we approve the revised economic development incentive policy to include a public infrastructure financing program. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? We got that done. Business item number 2. Consider adopting an ordinance extending the term of the current natural gas franchise with Kansas Gas Service, a division of One Gas Incorporated, due to expire March 6, 2016. Good evening, Counselor.
Good evening. I'm gonna take items 2 and 3 together because they're tied. You will recall that I was before you back on the 19th of January for the Atmos natural gas franchise. At that time, we passed the ordinance. The ordinance was in the form as has been approved for many natural gas ordinances for municipalities all across Johnson County. Atmos did come back and have some suggested revisions. Kansas Gas also has had some suggested revisions. So at this time, what I'm requesting is a short extension of the current franchises that are in place until August to enable us to arrive at uniform natural gas franchises. And that's kind of an important piece when you're dealing with utilities and franchise agreements, that there be commonality between the two, because the Kansas statutes dictate that we're not supposed to provide any competitive advantage in one provider over another. So it's really pretty important that these two follow a similar track and a similar timeline, and thus the requested uniform extensions. I did have on new business item number 3, a requested revision from Atmos, and that would be as follows, Mr. Mayor. Just to Section 4, they've requested that the language in that section be amended to state that Atmos Energy Corporation will pay the costs of the publication of this ordinance, and that would be my recommendation, that we go ahead and agree to that requested amendment. With that, if any of you have any questions, I'd be happy to take those.
All right. Public comments regarding new business item number 2, and we're going to do 3 right after. With no one coming forward, questions for Ryan about these new business items?
So let me get this straight, Ryan. We're just extending the existing franchise agreements until August 6th.
Right.
And this is for the purposes of making them uniform per statute.
Right. Really the key question is, on like the effective rate, none of that is going to change.
Okay.
I've gotten sufficient direction from all of you on that.
All right.
And so a lot of the changes that I'm going to be bringing forward will actually look to capture more revenue, like on their transfer stations and places like that, but won't affect the individual consumers here in Gardner.
Okay. All right. So this is a housekeeping item.
That's correct, yes.
That's for you, Laura, if you're watching this on YouTube.
So you can keep making money while we negotiate these.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
We appreciate that.
Yeah, I do my best.
These will be 2 separate
Okay.
ordinances, correct?
They are 2 separate ordinances. Any other comments or questions? Okay. We've got ordinance number 2512, considering the Kansas Gas franchise. I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Shute, second Melton, that we adopt ordinance number 2512, extending the term of the natural gas franchise with Kansas Gas Service, a division of One Gas Incorporated, until August 5th, 2016. We were talking about adding
That's the next one.
Yeah, let that.
section 4.
That'll be-
That's that one?
Yeah. And it'll be ordinance number 2511, since the
Oh,
previous
right.
proposed ordinance was tabled.
Thank you. So, motion Shute, second Melton, and we adopt ordinance number 2511. The city clerk, can you call roll on this?
Councilmember Harrison?
Yes.
Councilmember Melton?
Yes.
Councilmember Moore?
Yes.
Councilmember Shute?
Yes.
Councilmember Winters?
Yes.
Ordinance 2511 passes. Would I entertain a motion on ordinance number 2512?
So moved. Second.
Motion Shute, second Winters, we adopt ordinance number 2512, extending the term of the current natural gas franchise with Atmos Energy until August 5th, 2016, as amended by section 4. City Clerk, can you call roll?
Councilmember Harrison?
Yes.
Councilmember Melton?
Yes.
Councilmember Moore?
Yes.
Councilmember Shute?
Yes.
Councilmember Winters?
Yes.
2512 passes. Thanks, Ryan. Sure. New business item number 4. Consider appointments to the Airport Advisory Board. We had an opening due to a resignation from the airport board, and we had another seat that was up for reappointment. We went through, as it turns out, the standard procedure as laid out in the governing body rules of procedure, including a recruitment process and an interview process, and we come this evening with a recommendation. The interview team consisted of myself, the council vice president, and Councilmember Harrison, and this evening we're going to recommend the appointment of Ray Dorr, and the appointment of Chad Tate to fill the unexpired term of Peter Yazbek. That all being said, we'll open the floor for public comments regarding these two appointments. With no one coming forward, questions regarding either of these two appointments? Well, I'd entertain a motion to reappoint Ray Dorr.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Harrison, second Winters, that we reappoint Ray Dorr to the Airport Advisory Board with his term expiring in January 2019. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstention? I don't think Ray's here, but welcome back, Ray. Entertain a motion to appoint Chad Tate.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Harrison, second Winters, that we appoint Chad Tate to the Airport Advisory Board, filling the unexpired term of Peter Yazbek, with his term expiring in January 2018. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Chad, I see you back there. Welcome to the Airport Board.
Isn't it customary for him to give a speech?
Well, you start tonight.
Yeah, that's, we've got the TV camera set up out back for you. Yeah. New business item number 5. Consider appointment of a city prosecutor pro tem. Our city prosecutor has submitted his resignation. We've got a staff recommendation to appoint Alex S. McCauley as the city prosecutor pro tem. That's about all the presentation we've got on that one. Any public comments regarding new business item number 5? Questions regarding the applicant?
I was just hoping that somebody would ask what pro tempore means. I Googled it. I have the answer.
Please.
Would you please explain? It means for the time being.
Very nice. I'm fine with this.
Thank you.
Current prosecutor has given his blessing on this particular, pro tempore, appointment, so I'm good. Let's get to a vote.
Sure.
I'll even make a motion.
All right, entertain a motion for new business item number 5.
I move it.
Second.
Motion, Shute, second, Melton, that we appoint Alex S. McCauley as city prosecutor pro tem from March 1st, 2016 through May 31st, 2016. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstention? Motion carries. So, no executive session this evening, so we'll move to council updates. Does staff have anything for council? Gonzalo?
Nothing tonight.
Jeff?
Since I'm not a KU fan, I might take a few minutes, if you will allow it. I'm on the edge here, Mayor, but,
We're adjourned?
I will, go ahead, Jeff.
okay. I thought I might give a brief update, in regards to the town hall meeting held for the Gardner Golf Course, property. Aligned with City Council's desire to have, additional citizen engagement and participation on city projects, we, opted to start, our project and taking a look at the Gardner Golf Course property, by having a town hall meeting and getting some opinions of our citizens. That was held on February the 9th at the Gardner Senior Citizens Building. Many of you in attendance, certainly. In addition to that, we had approximately 107 citizens in attendance and 8 staff members.
Back to the rep.
Yes. Do want to express my sincere thanks to all those involved. I know Danica helped out a lot with getting the word out. Greg provided some assistance with our new VPS polling equipment, which was a fan favorite. We continue to hear positive feedback on that. So 89 polling results were submitted, and that included the 64 on the electronic survey, as well as some additional hard copies when we ran out of our remotes. All the data has been inputted into the spreadsheet, including the hard copies. The results have been tabulated and will be presented at the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee meeting on February 22nd, and then brought to the governing body at the March 7th work session. Want to point out that we continue to receive comments. We did receive a number of comments, written comments at the town hall meeting. We've reviewed all of those. I might put Jeannie on the spot if she can quickly put up the city website on the home page for me, if she hasn't shut down yet. But on the home site, we also have a link where folks can continue to submit comments about the property. There's a link on there that they can simply click and provide some information to us, and we'll certainly share that with you folks as well. I think that's all I have.
Okay. So, and that's where the frequently asked questions are. Now, this is just the first step in
Yes, sir.
what is going to take place over the next
Many
roughly
months.
18 months.
Yes, sir.
All right, well, it was a very nice event, thanks. Larry?
We'd just like to remind the public once again that tomorrow night here in the City Council chamber, starting at 6, we will have another town hall meeting, and this one will be for boats, RVs, trailers, and associated watercraft, to garner public opinion and input for the current land code development rewrite that we're going through. And we currently have some items on the books that we're trying to elicit additional information for as to what types of activities we should be allowing for the parking on our streets and roads and next to our homes in the community. Along with that, also on Thursday night on the 18th will be the next Economic Development Advisory Committee, just mentioning that for the public benefit.
Very good, thanks, Larry. Brian?
Nothing, Mayor.
Chief? How's the wing, healing?
It's all right.
Okay. One of these days, you're gonna have to tell the story. One of these days. I know you're not ready yet. Jeannie?
Yes, Mayor. Raymond Kimsey has resigned from the Planning Commission, and according to the governing body rules of procedure, an interviewing team needs to be selected for the appointment process. And if you don't mind, I would like to cover some of the timeline issues with this appointment and the efficient solution that staff is proposing.
Okay.
Raymond's term expires in May of this year, and the rules of procedure state that the interview team shall submit to the City Council a recommendation to fill the vacancy within 60 days from the date the office became vacant. He notified the city on January 26th. The 60 days from that date is March 26th. Therefore, the appointment would need to be considered at the March 21st meeting. According to the Municipal Code, Chapter 2.30.020, which is the Planning Commission section, in the event of vacancies, the appointment shall be for the unexpired terms. Therefore, the appointment that would be considered on March 21st would expire on May 31st of this year. The appointed individual would only serve for 2 meetings, April and May. The rules of procedure do allow the interview team to request that the City Council extend the process for an additional 30 days for good cause. And it lists a number of reasons of good cause and then states anything else that you determine would be good cause. Staff began the appointment process for this vacancy with the public notice on February 10th, noting an application deadline of February 19th. The notice did state that the appointment would expire in May of this year. When reviewing the appointment process for this position, staff realized that there is another position that expires in May and one in July. It is staff's recommendation that the interview and appointment process be held at the same time for all 3 positions. The public notice would specifically note the terms of the positions, and consideration of the 3 appointments would be scheduled for the April 18th council meeting to facilitate the requirement of the 30-day extension previously noted. The appointments would be made effective for a specific date to coincide with the varying expiration dates. Staff will also recommend a housekeeping item to change the expiration of the July term to May to coincide with the rest of the Planning Commission terms. This process will allow for an efficient interview process and give the replacement for Mr. Kimsey the opportunity to serve beyond 2 meetings.
Okay. Very good. And before we move too much further, 3 Planning Commission seat interviews. Do I have any volunteers?
I'll see it.
Council President, Councilmember Moore, Jeannie, mark them down. Don't let them out of it.
We gotta work our calendars.
Yeah.
Exactly. I know your calendar.
Jeannie, that's, thank you for that.
Yes.
Jeannie brought this to my attention, and, I mean, it was a little cumbersome, and I think that what she's proposing is a very common sense
Absolutely.
and very efficient solution, to what could be just a very big pain, so. Matt, do you have anything from finance?
I have no updates at this time.
Brian? Cheryl?
No.
All right, let's, council, do you have anything for staff? Rich, we'll start with you.
Real quick, the senior center, when are we looking at starting on that?
Yes, we're currently in design process
Okay.
right now. Taking a look at the schedule, I do have a meeting with them tomorrow, I believe it is, with our design consultants. And our schedule, we're hopeful for a construction start date sometime in April.
Okay.
That's our hope if all goes well.
Awesome, thank you. And then also, tomorrow night, for those who don't have anything to do, after the trailer thing, we're gonna have our first police advisory committee meeting, so somewhere here in City Hall, probably not with the trailers, so. But we look forward to everybody who's gonna make it.
Just come straight over.
Right, I mean, you're already here.
Bring your trailers.
Right, I did.
Todd, do you have anything?
I do, as a matter of fact. Well, you probably heard on the news recently, Tobacco 21 has become a big issue. A lot of cities, or several cities in Kansas, have move to raising the age to purchase cigarettes to 21 years old. And, in fact, Olathe just passed this, I think, last week it was, I believe. So I think it's something, we've had several people reach out to us, regarding this, and I think it's something we should at least discuss, as a council. So I've got some paperwork here. One is a letter from, Roy Jensen, who's a former, Gardnerite, who is now the director of the University of Kansas Cancer Center. And the other page is some information from, the Tobacco 21 organization, with some facts and figures. So I would like to see if we could get this on an agenda coming up and discuss it as a council.
Yeah.
Somewhere interested.
I got no issue with a presentation on this.
Well, I think that it starts with a presentation on this, then decide. It could possibly be a work session item, but,
Or work session, that's fine.
yeah. And Todd and I had talked about this, a little bit already, and possible on healthcare professional and the governing body, but, I think that there's, I think Olathe passed this 6-1. I think that it's, got some, I think it's got some legs. I think that there's people that can come and present some information that I think most people would find compelling. And actually, I think Dr. Jensen still lives out at Gardner Lake.
Oh, does it?
But he is from Gardner.
Yeah.
So, and it's great to have the director of the University of Kansas Cancer Center living in our community, even if it's just outside the city limits. So we can move towards a presentation about it, and then we can go from there.
Okay, so presentation, not a work session, right?
Presentation,
Okay.
let's see if the council wants to move forward
Okay.
after they see a little bit more information.
All right,
That where we're at?
Fine with me?
okay.
Very
It's
good.
easier to schedule a presentation than it is to
Yes.
schedule a work session.
Anything else?
Typically
Tom?
doing this time of year.
No.
All right. Lee?
I just have one thing, and it's more a question than anything, and it kind of goes along with Mr. Rose's public comments today. I was going to ask, is there any way possible that we could provide a summary of airport finances for airport advisory board meetings, similar to what we used to do for the utility board? It was very helpful. It gives the committee members a little bit of buy-in to the expenses and the, the revenues, things like that. Lets them kind of have some ownership of it, even though they may not be necessarily making direct decisions to impact it. So I just thought maybe it would be a low-impact thing that we could do.
Yeah.
Cheryl, is this something we could do easy enough?
We can look into it. Like you mentioned before, it is an advisory board, but we can look into some kind of like summary report.
Right.
Well, I mean, those summary reports are available to the public with a core request. It's just that I
Yeah.
don't, I think.
We don't want to make them.
Exactly.
Right.
I don't
Very
want the
core.
advisory board that's charged with helping to set some policy direction for the airport to have to go through a core request to get that information. It just
Right.
doesn't make a lot of sense.
Oh, I don't think.
I believe also like, our expenditures related to airport can also be seen in like the expenditure reports that council approves.
That's
Right.
true. It's a lot of spreadsheets, though.
Yeah, we can find a simple summary that they can go through.
That would be great.
Yeah. Lee,
Does
anything?
everybody agree?
Yes.
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 Yeah, I think so. Mhm.
That's it.
Christie?
Yeah, I just have, back to the sub-area plan, I just want to talk a minute about how we're going to approach that, because one of the things I think that's important to note is there were 5 meetings held, about 35 people attended the first one, and then it kind of declined from there, but I guess I'm wondering, we've had 4 or 5 people express some pretty significant or concerns about should we meet with them individually and come back then to the larger group, kind of publicize it, versus having this larger group get back together to rehash things that, I mean, because honestly, I've heard pretty good feedback from people, and a lot of people thinking, hey, everybody's done exactly what we asked, but I don't know the specific ones in question. After the planning commission meeting, when I reached out to people, most people didn't have concerns with what the people were questioning, so like the C3 zone or what have you, and leaving it that way, and didn't really feel like they drove much of the decision one way or another. So I think we can resolve this fairly quickly by meeting with some of the individuals that voiced their concerns.
I would agree. I think we meet with them individually and see what the concerns are, and then, at the next meeting, I will give you an update on the status of that. We'll at least try to get them scheduled, or at least have met with them. If we can't meet with them, we'll have them scheduled.
Okay, great, thank you.
Steve?
Couple of things. First of all, I wanted to remind everybody about the RVs, boats, and trailers town hall. The clickers will be there tomorrow night.
Yes.
So, love to see. I know that there's a lot of people who've had, who've been in this, council chambers asking about the RVs, boats, and trailers. This is their chance to have their thoughts expressed. So, just want to put that out there. On the 17th, of course, Rich's police thing, but he's already talked about that. And the 17th, the ADA Advisory Committee, which is my committee, will be meeting here at the council chambers. So, again, more opportunities to meet. Street, sidewalk, and stormwater advisory committee. I went to that meeting a couple of weeks ago, and I've been getting questions from folks about, what's the timetable going to be for some of the improvements that they're expecting to see in year one. Would you be able to speak on some of the improvements and what your basic idea of the timetable is going to be, Brian? Because I think it'd be very enlightening to folks.
We have scheduled to go back to the advisory committee in the month of March with an updated plan.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it's April 4th, we have to bring forth to council a couple of ordinances. One is the main traffic way and traffic way connections ordinance, followed by a resolution on streets that would be doing using bond proceeds. I think we can get everything accomplished, my understanding, in an April meeting. We would hope to bid sometime towards the end of April with award in May, and with construction starting in early summer.
Okay, and then, so early summer we'll be doing our own internal street sidewalks, and then we've also got the not the CDBG, but the CARS program project, which is South Center. And what's the time?
Right, the South Center project is currently being designed in-house. It's two components: a water line relocation first, and then a street reconstruction. Probably about the same time frame. We'd like to get a lot of that work done in the summertime when the kids aren't in school and the buses are using the road. So.
Yeah. Okay, great. The last thing is about the golf course, and great meeting. I love the staff presentation. You did a tremendous job, Jeff.
Thank you, sir.
The question I've got is, it's a question that's been given to me several times since the golf course meeting, and that is about the current conditions of the course. Now, we know that it's pretty rough out there, especially on the greens. There's some serious issues with the greens as well as the tee boxes, and the fairways aren't being kept up as well as they should be either. Understanding it is winter right now, is there any possibility that or have there been any discussions at all with Jim Pruitt, who's managing the course now, as to whether or not we might be able to get some staff out there to help to, if nothing else, try to maintain the condition rather than let it deteriorate further?
Sure. No question, and that's actually one thing that we owned up to at the meeting the other night, that the conditions are in poor condition, to say the least, in certain areas. Really, that's kind of a policy decision on how or what resources we release to the operator. Contractually, the operator is responsible for all maintenance of the facility and all costs associated with that. So that would be a policy decision if that's something that we would want to release to that.
I would imagine that we'd want to be further along in the process and
Yeah.
have an understanding of what direction we wanted to move with the golf course first, though.
No,
I mean,
I get
if we're planning on cutting it to 9 holes instead of 18 holes, we don't want to be taking care of 18 holes worth of fairways, right?
Yeah, I think that's a good point, as we discuss possible options and what path we may choose to go down. There's that decision, but certainly in the interim here, until we get to the August of 2018 expiration date of the current operating agreement, we do have some concerns with the current conditions and even moving forward and how fast a golf course can deteriorate if not maintained properly.
Sure.
Are there any, in his contract, I mean, as far as how he leaves it, other than taking this building, is there any kind of clawback for us as far as the condition it's left in, or?
Not really. There's not performance measurements per se built into the operating agreement, and it was drafted nearly 30 years ago. It was a different time, different place, so.
Wasn't especially comprehensive.
Yeah.
That's why you don't have 30-year agreements either.
Yeah. Okay. Steve, anything else?
No, that's it for mine.
All right. Yeah, I wanted to mention real quickly about the golf and budget forum. I want to thank everybody that came out for them. Staff did a great job on both events, and I'm sure we can expect similar results at tomorrow night's town hall meeting on boats and trailers and RVs. Also, I did want to suggest for those of you that, and all of you, council members, sit on one committee or another, you know, when we do council updates, if you've had a recent, I know Rich has got a meeting coming up, and, you know, if you can be prepared to maybe, if there's anything substantive that's happened in your committee, just give a little update for the council and the people in the audience and for the record. I'm thinking, you know, short, sweet, to the point. And when it comes to the Economic Development Committee, I'm going to have Christie handle that one because she's on that committee, and I don't necessarily have a very good reputation for being short, sweet, and to the point.
You're talking to the wrong group of people if you're asking for short, sweet, and to the point.
Well, okay.
Sure.
Yeah.
Hate to point fingers, Steve.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe
Hey.
some of us have a hard time with short, sweet, and to the point, but I think everybody else is pretty succinct by comparison.
Okay.
Anyway, that's all I had. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion more, second comparison that we adjourn. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, any abstention, we stand adjourned.
Something we need to get done.
You bet. I'm glad to have you.